Hello and welcome to today's edition of Your Questions Answered with Father Gruner. I'm John Veneri. We take the questions that you send us on this program. Father Gruner answers them, we talk about them, and continue, please, to send them to us. Questions@thefatimacenter.com is the email. Today we have a question about so-called Eucharistic ministers, which is really not a term, but anyway, you get the idea.
The actual term is extraordinary ministers.
Which means it should be an extraordinary site, which
yes,
it's not.
Well, it should be extraordinary. You know, of course, they've taken even the word extraordinary to make it. I mean, the extraordinary rite of Mass, it's not even a rite, is the Novus Ordo, but they make that anyway. But
we'll do another program on that.
On the word extraordinary. But anyway, when they talk.
So anyway, let me get through the question. It says, it's against church law to receive communion in the hand. It's also against church law to have. Is it also against church law to have lay people as Eucharistic ministers?
Yes.
Handling the host in the same manner as the priest?
Yes.
If priests' hands are consecrated, are the Eucharistic ministers?
No.
Should we decline to take communion from a lay Eucharistic minister?
Yes.
Okay, that's it for that program. No. Well, we answered certainly, but let's give a little some of the whys.
Sure. Okay. So, first of all, it is against church law to receive communion in the hand, and the reason why it's, first of all, it's of divine origin.
It's not just church law.
It's not just church law. It's the church. The church is, in its law, is reflecting what the gospel is teaching, and
it's a law that reflects the nature of things.
Yes. Yeah. And so laws are useful. I mean, first of all law is. I mean, first of all, the law itself, as St. Thomas says, all law cannot be law if it doesn't have four qualities to it. It's got to be promulgated, and everyone knows that these days. It's got to be by one in authority who promulgates it. But people think that all you need is a law that's promulgated to make it law. That's not enough.
There's two more components.
One is that it's for the common good, and that it's reason.
Principle of reason.
It's reason. So it has to be rational. It has to be reasonable. If it's not reasonable, then it's not law. If it's not for the common good, it's not law. If it's not been promulgated, it's not law. And if it's not by one in authority who promulgates it, it's not law.
Any one of those missing means it's not a law.
That's right, exactly. So the whole thing is that, in fact, is that church law, even promulgated church law today, still professes, contrary to what 99% of the bishops, cardinals, and priests think, the church law, as pronounced, as promulgated, to this day, still says communion in the hand is forbidden. It still says that. Now, how do we know that? Because they have an indult. An indult is the permission to go against the law under certain circumstances. So communion in the hand is allowed by indult, which means that the law still exists. So the law still forbids, and the indult has 2 principles and 7 conditions for being able to go against it, for someone in authority to give you permission to do that. In my estimation, up to now, I've yet to see that these 2 principles and 7 conditions are being met. So as far as I know, and I only have to take care of the place where I'm in charge. I'm not in charge of a diocese. I'm not in charge of a lot of things. I am in charge, though, of my Mass. And so in my Mass, and not just anywhere else I go, I cannot give communion in the hand because it's against the law. I'm the obedient one. Most of them are disobedient. Now, are they in ignorance? And are they forgiven by their ignorance? God knows. But they're disobeying the law. I'm the one who's accused of being disobedient. They're all disobedient. But the second thing is it also against church law to have as Eucharistic ministers, or as they actually put the term down, extraordinary
minister of the Eucharist. Yes.
And the reason why the extraordinary is because they know that the law of God says that the minister of the Eucharist has to be a minister. That is, he has to be ordained. He has to be at least a deacon. And even even a deacon cannot give communion without the priest at the time commissioning the deacon, because he's the ordained minister who has the capacity if the priest commissions him. Nobody else can be commissioned by a priest except a deacon, or another priest. Of course, the other priest doesn't need a commissioning or of course the bishop himself or the pope. And obviously, all cardinals these days are usually bishops, and they're at least priests. So, but we're talking about orders. Now, so in turn, the Eucharistic ministers are also lay ministers of the Eucharist are forbidden by law, and you need an indult to go against the law. But in both cases, you have to have a reason, a sufficient reason to break the law, and that's where this thing falls down. Is that most times I can't say 100% because there's conditions all over the world. I don't pretend to know. But most of the time, let's just take the ordinary parish if we want to, and that there's going to be a big football game at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and this is Mass at noon, and there's 2,500 people who want to go to communion. It might take more time than they want to spend, but really it's putting, the fact is, it's not an extraordinary circumstance whereby they're in some sort of danger of death, or they're going to faint on their way going home or something like that. It's some inconvenience. That does not constitute grounds for having a Eucharistic minister of the Eucharist. That's
I know you're making an example here, but they don't even use excuses like that anymore. It's just part of the makeup that there will be lay ministers at every Mass, including daily Mass. I know somebody who, the priest called him to help him give out communion on daily Mass when there's about 12 people there.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's...
it's just part of this Protestantized practice that is entered the Church since the Council, through the Council.
Well, the whole thing is that, first of all, there is a law. The law does exist. And the law still is on the books. Not only, the law, first of all, is founded on divine revelation. And secondly, the Church law still reflects that, even if they don't practice it. So if somebody's asking an honest question, and I believe this person to be asking an honest question.
Yes, yeah,
and what I'm trying to get at is that the honest answer to that honest question is no, they don't have a right to have a Eucharistic minister, a layperson, giving them. They don't have this right, and they can't even break the law by way of indult unless there's sufficient reason. And certainly, 12 people going to communion. Now, if we're talking about a priest who's in a wheelchair and who can't get down the steps, and maybe you can't give communion, well, I might start considering that. But you're not talking about something like that. You're talking about a priest who's perfectly capable of going from the altar to the altar rail, if there is an altar rail still, and
also we have, St. Thomas Aquinas, who has that beautiful little section in the Summa about only that which is consecrated can touch that which is consecrated. So the priest's hands are consecrated for touching the Eucharist.
Yes.
And the Eucharistic ministers, you just can't give a layperson a piece of the priesthood.
No.
His hands should be consecrated, so we're going to consecrate so he.
Well, you just think about Saint Isaac Jogues. I talked about it in another question. Saint Isaac Jogues had his forefinger, his right hand forefinger, chewed down by his persecutors in North America, and his thumb. So he couldn't hold the host anymore because they were chewed off. He asked permission to use other fingers in order to be able to touch the host. That's the kind of respect they had for the letter of the law in those days.
And one last point too is that that when the host is handled, there are little particles that fall.
Yes.
And the Council of Trent teaches that the smallest minute particle of the host is still the body, blood, soul, and divinity of Jesus Christ. So the old rubrics in the Latin Mass, everything was designed that the priest didn't touch anything until his fingers were washed. Even after he had consecrated the host, when he opened the tabernacle, he has the key in these two fingers.
The middle fingers.
The two middle fingers here. And he doesn't touch anything with these fingers until...
Or if you're awkward, what you use is a little bowl to wipe off to dissolve the consecrated host so no longer is present, and then you can use your fingers. If some priests are not that good at turning the key, but one way or the other.
But the safeguarding of the particles is important.
Yes.
But even in the new rite of Mass, that all those ablutions have been done away with, and so we can't be surprised then if it rolls into this practice of so-called Eucharistic ministers who just their hands are not consecrated. What you have in the objective order is you have a sacrilege going on.
Yes, many sacrileges. Yes, repeatedly. So the point is that it's not allowed by law, and it's not even allowed by indult unless there's a sufficient reason. And I don't know if this sufficient, just like in Eucharist, communion in the hand, is not, in my estimation, and I'm not, since you're asking me, I don't think there's sufficient reason for most cases. I can't say for all cases, but I think that the people who are watching this or people who are asking this question, I don't think that sufficient reason is even envisioned in the indult.
No, and as I said, now the practice of Eucharistic ministers has just become the accepted practice.
And so should we decline communion from the elect? And the answer would be absolutely yes. Because if you're going to do your little part, we all should uphold the common good. And you're not a priest, and you're not a bishop, and you're not a pope, but you are a member of the church. And as such, by receiving communion from an extraordinary so-called lay minister, you're part of the problem by doing that.
Yes, so just receive from a priest and on your knees and on the tongue.
Yes.
And that's all for this program. We will see you next time.